On August 19, 1942, deep within the tangled jungle near Taiview Point on Guadalcanal, 2nd Lieutenant Genjiro Imi of the 8th Independent Anti-Tank Gun Company documented in his diary the surprise experienced by many Japanese troops upon their first contact with American soldiers. Winding their way through a thick ceiling of palm leaves and choking vines, Imi and the 916 other members of Colonel Kona Ichiki's unit had only just come ashore from destroyers, concluding a nighttime landing that Japanese High Command believed would initiate the recapture of Henderson Field. They had received reports suggesting the Americans numbered around 2,000 men, lacking proper training, easily intimidated, and made soft by privileged lives. Colonel Ichiki himself brushed aside cautions to hold out for additional support. "These are Americans," he stated to his subordinates. "We will push them into the ocean before daybreak." What these battle-seasoned veterans of campaigns in China and Southeast Asia did not realize was that they were poised to experience something never before seen in the records of the Imperial Japanese Army. It was not just the possibility of defeat which these soldiers, victorious since 1937, had never considered, but the methodical destruction of every tactical expectation, all strategic beliefs, and every ideological tenet that had shaped Japan's conduct of war. The jungle surroundings would be turned into a tool for the Americans. The darkness, long held as an advantage by Japanese troops since the war's outset, would now betray them, and overwhelming American advantages in weaponry, organization, and outright destructive force would break the illusion of Japanese supremacy in close-range battle. The transition commenced 2 weeks before, on August 7, when 11,000 Marines from the United States 1st Marine Division landed at Lunga Point. General Alexander Vandegrift's Leathernecks undertook Operation Watchtower, marking the inaugural American offensive of the Pacific War. Their mission appeared simple in theory: capture the almost finished Japanese airstrip, set up a defensive line, maintain their position until support arrived. In fact, they were about to engage in the longest and harshest campaign the Marine Corps had ever experienced, within a setting that pushed the boundaries of human survival. The island presented a nightmarish landscape of the tropics. Guadalcanal measured 90 miles in length and 25 miles in width, with its center dominated by mountains climbing 8,000 feet into constant clouds. The coastal plain containing Henderson Field consisted of Kenai grass, swamp, and dense jungle, reducing visibility to just a few feet. The oppressive heat never let up, and the humidity remained above 90% at all times. Mosquitoes gathered in such thick swarms that men breathed them in. Although reconnaissance pictures showed the rivers and streams as enticing and clear, these waters were filled with parasites and illness. Malaria, dengue fever, dysentery, and tropical ulcers would ultimately incapacitate more troops than enemy attacks. However, that first morning, the Marines discovered the airfield was almost unguarded. The 2,200 Japanese laborers and 600 Navy personnel retreated into the jungle, leaving behind their gear, provisions, and, most importantly, the airstrip. By the end of August 8, American engineering crews had started work to finish the runway. They would call it Henderson Field to honor Major Lofton Henderson, a Marine pilot lost at Midway. In just a few days, the first planes would arrive and the site would turn into the legendary home of the Cactus Air Force. The Japanese counterattack was immediate and devastating for the U.S. Navy. On the night of August 9, Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa guided 7 cruisers and 1 destroyer into a successful nighttime ambush. The Battle of Savo Island was recorded as the most calamitous defeat in U.S. Navy history. In under an hour, 4 heavy cruisers USS Quincy, USS Vincennes, USS Astoria, and HMS Canberra were sunk. Over 1,000 U.S. sailors lost their lives in the burning sea. The remaining Allied ships withdrew, removing with them most supplies still on board. The Marines were left isolated, their supply lines cut, facing strengthened opposition with only about half their gear and rations. What Japanese higher-ups failed to realize during those August days was that Henderson Field had become the campaign's decisive point. Possessing the airfield allowed dominance over nearby waters during daytime. Planes from Henderson could attack any Japanese vessel within a 200-mile radius. This single reality would shape the whole campaign. The Japanese held the advantage after dark, bringing reinforcements and materials on fast destroyers in missions called the Tokyo Express. Yet, once daylight came, American aircraft dominated the airspace. The strategic circumstances required that Japan promptly recapture Henderson Field before the Americans could establish strong defenses there. Imperial General Headquarters placed this mission under the command of Lieutenant General Hirokichi Hyakutake's 17th Army, which was stationed at Rabaul. Hyakutake possessed only a modest number of troops for the operation. Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi's 35th Infantry Brigade was located in Palau. The 4th Infantry Regiment remained in the Philippines. The nearest unit was Colonel Ichiki's 28th Infantry Regiment, originally posted in the vicinity of Guam. It had been intended for the Midway operation, which had been called off following the naval defeat in June. Colonel Kona Ichiki, a teacher at the infantry school, was known both for his tactical expertise and being a first-class strategist. He was equally renowned for his rashness and his unshakable faith in Japanese valor triumphing over American resources. Before leaving Truk en route to Guadalcanal, Ichiki was specifically ordered to wait for the rest of his regiment to arrive before attempting to seize the airstrip. However, Ichiki felt little esteem for American troops. He had reviewed reports from actions in China, the Philippines, and all locations where Japanese forces had fought against Western armies. He found them undisciplined. They faltered under stress. In hand-to-hand fighting, he believed they were inferior to Japanese soldiers. On the night of August 18, a group of 6 destroyers brought ashore 917 troops belonging to Ichiki's advanced detachment at Tyu Point, 15 miles to the east of the American defensive lines. The disembarkation went without issue, with the Americans remaining unaware. Almost immediately, Ichiki dispatched scouting patrols to evaluate the opposition's strength and determine their defense setup. This routine military step would ultimately be disastrous. On August 19, a patrol led by Captain Charles Brush of Company A, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, was advancing along the coastal path toward Kohi Point and encountered Japanese forces. The two groups became engaged in a short but intense firefight. The Marines killed 31 Japanese soldiers and seized documents indicating a major Japanese troop presence in the area. Even more significant, the captured materials revealed that the Japanese had a seriously inaccurate estimate of American numbers. Captain Brush hurried back to the defensive line with his collected intelligence. General Vandergrift grasped the situation at once. A Japanese assault was imminent, most likely from the east. He directed Colonel Clifton Cates to reinforce the defenses near the sandbar at the mouth of the river the Marines referred to as the Tenaru. Its actual name was the Alu River, but the mistake in naming would be repeated in all later accounts. Cates positioned Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Creswell's 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, along the banks with machine guns arranged to deliver intersecting fire over the sandbar. The events that soon followed would rank as one of the most lopsided victories in Marine Corps annals. Instead of waiting to hear back from his missing patrol or for additional forces to arrive, Colonel Ichiki chose to launch an immediate offensive. On the night spanning August 20th to the early hours of August 21st, he commanded a direct frontal attack straight over the sandbar. Japanese military strategy stressed the dominance of spiritual strength and the effectiveness of bold nighttime assaults to outmatch enemy firepower. Ichiki was confident that his seasoned troops could breach the American lines by sheer boldness and through close-range clashes, where Japanese infantrymen held an advantage using bayonets and hand grenades. Shortly past midnight, a Solomon Island scout named Jacob Buza, who had escaped from Japanese captivity after enduring hours of torture, arrived at the Marine lines exhausted to deliver a warning. He alerted them that the Japanese were on their way. Within minutes, the assault commenced. Several hundred Japanese troops charged forward across the sandbar, shouting war cries, discharging rifles, tossing grenades. They moved headlong into a lethal zone that the Marines had meticulously prepared. The Marines' M1917A1 Browning water-cooled machine guns unleashed their fire. Developed to high efficiency during World War I, these guns formed the backbone of the Marines' fire support. Each weapon was capable of firing 600 rounds a minute without pause as long as the water jacket remained topped off. Marines arranged the guns for overlapping support, ensuring that every part of the sandbar was within range. Japanese soldiers collapsed in waves as the heavy .30 caliber bullets ripped through limbs and bodies. The few who managed to get past the sandbar faced 37mm anti-tank guns, loaded with canister ammunition, essentially massive shotgun blasts that left their targets in tatters. The onslaught persisted for hours. Successive formations of Japanese infantry pressed into the relentless machine gun barrage. A handful forced their way to Marine positions, initiating close-quarters battles. Marines defended themselves with rifles, combat knives, bare hands, and whatever else they could use. Yet the defenses held firm. Interconnected firing arcs prevented any Japanese penetration. By dawn, Colonel Ichiki's offensive had ground to a halt. Over 800 of his troops were dead or mortally wounded in the sandbar and shallow water. Morning brought no respite for the remaining Japanese fighters. General Vandergrift gave orders for a counterattack utilizing companies from the 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. 5 M3 Stuart light tanks rolled over the sandbar, methodically tracking down Japanese who had hidden in the coconut groves. War correspondent Richard Trigascus, observing from a Marine outpost, depicted the action. He said it was captivating to watch the tanks weaving among the trees, turning, changing direction, belching streams of yellow flame. The scope of the Japanese presence in the groves had not been fully appreciated. One group after another was flushed into the open and gunned down by tank firing canister rounds. By noon on August 21, the Battle of the Tenaru had finished. Out of the 917 Japanese who disembarked at Tyu Point, around 800 had been killed. Roughly 128 survivors, mostly support personnel who stayed near the landing point, faded into the jungle. They managed to transmit a radio message to the 17th Army headquarters describing their calamity. Colonel Ichiki was counted among the dead, though sources disagree about the circumstances of his death. The officially reported Japanese account was that he burned his regimental flag and took his own life by ritual suicide. Some eyewitnesses claimed he fell while leading a final assault. Marine losses numbered about 40 dead or wounded. The psychological toll on the remaining Japanese soldiers was immense.